to Jelly Trumpet.
So this is our bonus track on Jelly Trumpet with the actor and voiceover artist Paul Albertson. So in our interview, 12 questions in 12 minutes, Mr. Paul, we touched upon your hero, Orsen Wells. So can you remember the first time that he meant something to you? Was it his acting or was it his direction or what was it?
I think it was his presence, you know. I mean, I think I obviously watched him in a film and I just remember thinking, God, who's this guy? He's really good. Because he would have been in some black and white films, but he had a real naturalism to him. He had a wonderful naturalism to him, and his presence was brilliant as well. And then he had his very commanding voice. But there was a cheekiness to him as well, I remember. And even then you're watching him and you're not quite sure what he's doing. As you get older, you realize he's sort of breaking the rules a bit. Yeah. And that's what makes him really interesting to watch. So first of all, I was fascinated with him as a performer. And then of course you get more involved in it. And you start to watch, the classics, Citizen Kane and, A Touch of Evil and all that kind of stuff. And then so his work is fascinating, and then his story is very fascinating as well. He's the way he's gone. He's just started off where he got involved in the public consciousness with War of the Worlds, and then became this sort of genius that everyone lauded, and then no one would work with him and.
Yeah, he was a very young genius, wasn't he?
He's a very young genius, yeah, and of course, and you would have thought he would have had a very smooth ride, but he absolutely didn't,
No, because he wasn't conventional, he wasn't conservative. His parents weren't. If anyone is really interested in Orson Wells, I do recommend the Simon Callow biography of him and where he started and how he appeared to blag himself into the Abbey Players in Dublin and how he kicked off in New York and then how he boarded in Hollywood. And then you've mentioned some of his great films. There's two others that I would recommend. One is his take on Shakespeare, which is Chimes at Midnight, which has got a wonderful battle sequence in it, which is really mind-blowingly sad in a way. And the other one is that he was very interested in magic, wasn't he? So
he was very interested in magic.
F for Fake. Did you ever see that?
I never saw that. He tells a brilliant story about magic because he went to I can't remember who it was now, but he said that the reason people have professional magicians is because nobody wants anyone to do any magic in real life, And he said he went to a party once, big Hollywood party, and he thought someone's going to ask me to do a magic trick. So he said he went to this party and he had a rabbit put in his pocket because he just thought, somebody's going to ask me at some point to do a rabbit trick and I'm just going to stun the whole crowd by pulling a rabbit out of the hat or something like that. He said, and it got to about midnight and still no one had asked me to do a magic trick, by which point this rabbit had peed in my pocket 20 times. He said, and it got to 3 a.m, still no one had asked me. And I ended up, me and Miss Rabbit went home and it had never been released. But because no one wanted me to do any magic. He said, I never. It's a brilliant story, yeah.
He was big into his magic and his all his other stuff. Did you ever see him? I was fascinated by this. Seeing his interviews with Michael Parkinson.
Yeah, as I say, I watch his interviews all the time. There's again, YouTube is a brilliant resource for this. There are lots of fantastic interviews with him, where he was an outsider as well. So he had a very objective view on Hollywood and the films and the system. And I do think he was a man that was ahead of his time, really. It's been commented on. I think that's probably true that he was making independent cinema or trying to make independent cinema before that genre was even invented.
Was that a means to an end? Because he was very much of his own mind. I don't think he was a collaborator. He was more dictatorial. And then when he fell out with Hollywood, when they recut The Magnificent Ambersons, he sort of came to Europe, didn't he, and did all sorts of bit work and adverts to finance his own projects.
Yeah. Well, he realised that he didn't have, because originally he had full creative control over Citizen Kane. Which is because he was, this genius that was coming to Hollywood, and then RKO got taken over halfway through the Ambersons, and they decided when he was away that they were going to then recut the ending because they thought it was too gloomy. And then that was it. And I think once he realised that he didn't have creative control anymore, then the only way to get creative control is to work outside of that system and raise your own money and make your own films.
Because it was very much a studio system at that time, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sort of indentured studios. Yeah. So I'd like to pick up on a couple of other things possibly that we talked about in the 12 questions in 12 minutes. And that's, you're so professional. And one of the things that comes across is your sense of detachment, but in, I think, more, would you say, self-preservation? Because I knew I could never make it as an actor because I just can't deal with rejection. But you describe going in, when you go in for an audition, that you're being the best that you can, but not being aware of being desperate to get the part or be Yeah. Because you don't want that. You don't want to bring that sense of neediness into it, because the moment you have no control over whether or not they pick you to do that job or not. So if you go in there with that agenda, you're going to have a neediness about you, and you're not going to be as relaxed as you would be if your mindset was just, do you know what, I'm going to walk into this room and I'm going to do what I do, which is act, and I'm going to act this part. And whether I get the job or whether I don't get the job is completely out of my control. But what I do know is if I release all of that stuff, then I'm going to give a better performance, and whether they use me or not is completely up to them. But when you walk in with that attitude, it gives you a real sense of power and control, because you think, do you know what, if you don't use me, then somebody else will, And quite often I think when you bring what you do to the table at full force, it then becomes about compatibility. It doesn't become about pleasing the other person so that they think, oh yeah, let's give this person a job. If you as an artist are compatible with the project or the role or the person, then you two separate entities will probably work together if you are compatible. If you're not compatible, then you're probably not going to be working together. And if you can take that into every area of life, it's really about how compatible you are. Once you own what you do and how you present yourself to the world, it's about compatibility with other people, or as I say, or the role. Quite often I'll go out for a role and and I think, oh, I'm right for this role, and then if I don't get it, I'll watch it and they've chosen someone completely different. So who they had in mind is completely incompatible with what you are,
with my work. Or you might be going up for example, it might be that say you're going out for a play and you need to play two roles, and just say that you're compatible with one role but not the other, if they want to double you up and stuff like that. So again, you have no control over that. But if you go in there and just be creative, do what you do, present to them what you do, and walk away, and you keep doing that in every situation, you will get more work than if you just go into that every single audition trying to get the work.
I like that. That's fascinating for me.
It does, it does, and it does. It really does, because it just means that you just present your skill, your talent, your work, which is all you want to do, really.
Yeah. Unto yourself be true, I think, is a summation of that.
Absolutely.
Nice bit of Shakespeare. One of the three.
Absolutely, yeah. Nice. But I think that works if you're a musician as well, because if nerves get the best of you, if you're going into the audition and you want the job because you've got a really expensive gas bill to pay, that's going to interfere with what you do. That's going to, it's like anything, isn't it? It's like a penalty shootout. If the World Cup is on your shoulders on a penalty shootout, you're going to do a worse penalty.
I think it's really interesting that, and a good starting place for a lot of people, especially people in business, is what you've cultivated, is that detachment. It doesn't devalue yourself. In fact, it enhances your self-worth, because
Absolutely.
you're looking after yourself. And for people in business, etc., that I've talked to, a lot of people get upset, stressed by doing presentations or speeches. And one of the first things I learned on stage many, many, many years ago is that the audience doesn't know that you've made a mistake because they don't know the play. So you can get away with anything.
And the audience don't care. The audience really don't care whether or not you've made a mistake or not. And quite often, one of the things they teach you as an actor is try not to get too caught up in the result. The work itself is the reward. Yeah. It's not the result. It's not people thinking you're good. There's nothing worse than being in a scene and thinking, I hope I'm really good. I hope people think I'm really good in this scene. You just want to be. You just want to do the scene. You don't want half of you looking in, wondering if people think you're good or not, or whether you're getting approval, or whether the critics are going to give you a good review. If you think of it like that, the work itself that you're doing is the reward, not the praise afterwards, not the people telling you afterwards you did a great speech. Because if you concentrate on the work itself, you'll probably do a really good speech, and it'll be a lot more natural as well, rather than that self-consciousness of trying to impress people.
Yeah, I agree totally. The one thing I'd add to it is, because I did a lot of clown, not circus clown, French clown, the full sort of stuff. And one of the things that they made, one of the points they made was that if anything goes wrong, it's an opportunity. And so a clown loves things to go wrong because he can play with it. And I remember being the play what I wrote by The Right Size. Was it Hamish? Hamish McCall. McCall and Toby Jones were in this play in the West End many years ago, and something did go wrong. And they made hay with it. They just rode it and then came back to the play. And people love you for that if you own up if something's gone wrong. Just own up to it.
Yeah, because it becomes something spontaneous as well, and that, and it kind of makes it come alive again. Particularly if you're doing a play, and when you're in a play for a long time, one of the things that you are constantly trying to do is to make it fresh and alive and make it really sing again. Because it can get tired if you're doing the same thing every night. So when something goes wrong, it gives you a chance to improvise and fire up the blood. Yeah. And the audience pick up on that. They love it. They love it. Providing you're not thrown by it. Whereas if you're rigidly trying to get it right and something goes wrong, you're going to freeze.
Yes.
I think that's the less you try and get right, and the more you just concentrate on the work you do and be in a relaxed way as possible, is you're going to do a better job.
Yeah, I think it's an important lesson for all of us. And so the final thing I want to pick up, there were many things. We'll have to do another interview in season 3. But the one that intrigued me near the end was your comment that creativity isn't instant. Would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, I think what happens is that I think because a lot of life is instant these days, and people do think that, particularly from in the outside world. Well, I'm seeing it more in the inside, in the creative world as well. And I was talking to a designer about this, and he said, they're working me so hard at the moment that I don't have time to go off and look at other. I don't have time to restock by going to galleries, by going to places which will then generate these ideas for my designs to get better and better. I'm just being worked so hard that I don't actually I'm starting to burn out, because we continually need that input of inspiration, which is other people's work a lot of the time. We get inspired by other people's work. But I think what I'm noticing is getting cut down as well is the rehearsal process, because the rehearsal process is where really important creative things happen. It's not just you learn your lines, you don't bump into the furniture, and then you open a show. You're given a chance, because creativity comes from the subconscious mind. It doesn't come from the conscious mind. And it needs a little time to sort of bubble away and boil up. And, things need to take time for creativity to come. And, when we see Ed Sheeran come up, with his guitar and play a song, we go, wow, that's brilliant. He's 3 minutes. But of course, he hasn't just turned up with his guitar and started playing. He's been rehearsing that for about 4 months, and he's and he's played it every night for the last 7 weeks. So no wonder. But all you're seeing are those 3 minutes.
Yeah,
and that's what I think. I think people don't. you need to give creative people some time to do the prep work in order to come up with the really good ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, what you're going to get are the first ideas. And actually, if you give somebody a week or a couple of weeks, and they're really working on that project and they're giving it to their brain to process, they're going to come up with something a lot better in 2 weeks than they will do on the first day. So, and I think that the idea that creative people just come up with ideas immediately, which are exactly the right ideas to use, is wrong. Otherwise, we could rehearse a play in a week and then put a play up in a week, and it would be dreadful.
Very good point. Well, we'll come back to that one day, but I'm going to wind up now, and thank you very much, Paul Albertson, professional actor and voiceover artist. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jim. Cheers.